Why does it feel like you're failing, even when you're actually winning? Most of us are haunted by the ghost of our potential, that paralyzing guilt for every version of yourself you didn't become. It's a silent, stagnant grief. Today, we're dismantling that regret and transforming your heaviest what-ifs into raw fuel. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with it for a second. When was the last time you opened a drawer, or scrolled past an old bookmark, or heard a song, and felt this quiet, suffocating guilt creep up your chest? Not a loud guilt, not the kind that screams, the kind that just sits there, heavy, like a stone you swallowed years ago and never quite passed. Maybe it's the guitar collecting dust in the corner of your room. Maybe it's the half-finished business plan sitting in a Google Doc you haven't opened in 2 years. Maybe it's the law school brochures you saved, or the painting supplies still wrapped in plastic, or the Japanese language app you downloaded with so much hope and then quietly abandoned sometime around week 3. You look at those things and you don't just see objects. You see a person you were supposed to become, and you didn't. And somewhere deep in your nervous system, you filed that away as evidence. Evidence of what? That you're inconsistent, that you're a quitter, that you don't follow through, that you're scattered, undisciplined, and somehow fundamentally broken in a way that other people, the focused people, the successful people, just aren't. But here's what nobody is telling you. That guilt isn't a personality flaw. It's a debt, and you've been paying interest on it every single day. Think about what it actually costs you to carry this. Not emotionally, I mean cognitively. Neuroscientists call it cognitive load. Every unresolved identity, every version of yourself that you started building and never officially closed out, stays open in the background of your mind like a browser tab you can't bring yourself to close. And just like your laptop slows down when you've got 40 tabs open, your brain slows down too. You're not just distracted, you're taxed, constantly running background processes for people you no longer are, performing for an audience that stopped watching years ago. Think about who that audience actually is. Your high school self who swore you'd be a musician. Your college self who declared you'd change the world. That ambitious 20-something who made promises at New Year's that felt so real in the moment. They're all still in there, auditing your decisions. Are you sure about this? But what about what we said? You told me we were going to do this. That's identity debt, and it is corrosive in a way that's incredibly hard to name because it looks like caution. It looks like keeping your options open. It feels responsible, mature even. But what it actually is, and I need you to hear this, is sophisticated self-sabotage. Because here's the trap. When you keep every door cracked open, you think you're preserving possibility, but you're not. You're preventing commitment. And in 2026, in a world that is more distracted, more overwhelming, more algorithmically designed to fracture your focus than at any point in human history, the inability to fully commit to one direction at a time is not a quirk. It's a slow bleed. It's the thing that separates the people who talk about their dreams from the people who actually build them. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, but I'm curious. I'm a multi-passionate person. I have lots of interests. That's not a flaw, that's who I am. And you're right, that is who you are. But there's a massive difference between being multi-passionate and being paralyzed by the ghosts of every passion you've ever had. One is a superpower. The other is a haunting. So which one are you living in right now? Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The physical and digital clutter of your abandoned selves isn't neutral. It's not just stuff sitting there doing nothing. Every time you walk past that guitar, it sends a signal. Every time you see that unfinished manuscript in your files, it whispers. Every LinkedIn connection from a career path you left 6 years ago sends you a birthday notification, and for one weird second, you feel guilty. Why? Because you haven't officially closed that chapter. You're still, in some phantom way, half committed to a version of your life you already walked away from. There's a concept in psychology called the sunk cost fallacy. You probably know it from investing. It's why people hold on to failing stocks way too long, because they've already put so much in. But nobody talks about the sunk cost fallacy of the soul. The way we keep throwing good years after bad intentions. The way we stay loyal to who we used to want to be, even when who we are now has completely different needs, values, and direction. You owe your past self nothing. Let me say that again. You owe your past self nothing. The contract you signed with 19-year-old you was not legally binding. You are allowed to renegotiate. But instead, most of us don't. Most of us keep those old contracts alive. In our social circles, in our professional networks, in the way we introduce ourselves at parties. You ever catch yourself explaining your background to someone new and including chapters of your life that are completely irrelevant to who you are now, just because you're somehow still emotionally attached to them? That's not self-expression. That's maintenance. You are spending real social energy maintaining a museum of who you used to be. And here's where it gets really dark. Every ghost of an old dream doesn't just cost you energy individually. They vote. They vote against your present desires every single time you're faced with a choice. You want to go deep on something that genuinely lights you up right now, but the ghosts outvote you. The musician ghost says, "But you never gave music a real shot." The entrepreneur ghost says, "But we said we were going to build a company." The academic ghost says, "You were supposed to go back and get that degree." And suddenly, what was supposed to be a decision becomes a committee meeting. And the committee is full of people who don't even live here anymore. So how do you get them out of the room? I'm going to give you 5 concrete moves before this video ends. And I promise they're simpler than you think. But first, you need to understand why the room got so crowded in the first place. This is where it gets interesting. And honestly, this is the part most personal development content completely skips over, because it requires you to do something that feels almost violent at first. It requires you to consciously terminate old contracts, not forget them, not pretend they didn't happen. Terminate them. Officially, intentionally. Think about what happens when a business closes a project. They don't just walk away. There's a process. There's a final review, a formal ending. And then the resources, the people, the budget, the attention get reallocated. Nothing is wasted. Everything is redirected. You need to do the same thing with the abandoned versions of yourself. Not because those dreams weren't real. They were. But because you deserve to stop paying rent on buildings you no longer live in. This is what I call the great incineration. And no, I'm not being dramatic. Or actually, yes, I am. But that's because this deserves drama. This is your life we're talking about. You have to be radically honest with yourself about the difference between an interest that is dormant and an interest that is dead. One deserves your patience. The other deserves a funeral. And I know, the word quitting feels like failure to you. It probably always has. You were raised to finish what you started. Push through, grit, resilience, all of that. But here's the reframe that changes everything. You're not quitting, you're pruning. And if you've ever watched a real gardener work, pruning isn't gentle. It looks destructive. You're cutting living branches. But what you're actually doing is redirecting the energy of the entire tree into the branches with the highest potential for growth. The tree doesn't grieve the cut branches. The tree thrives. What would it feel like to prune your identity with that same intentionality? What branches are you keeping alive right now purely out of guilt? Purely out of misplaced loyalty to a past self who had less information than you do now? Now here's the part most people miss entirely when they go through a season of letting go. The energy doesn't disappear. When you stop maintaining the museum of your past selves, when you stop running those background processes, when you stop paying cognitive rent on abandoned dreams, that energy comes back to you, often in a rush, often overwhelming at first, because you haven't felt that level of available focus in years. And that's where the real work begins. Because focus without direction is just noise. What is your highest leverage project right now? Not the one with the most history. Not the one you've been talking about the longest. The one that, when you imagine being fully committed to it, not split, not hedged, not 1 foot in and 1 foot out, actually makes you feel something. Excitement mixed with fear. That particular cocktail, that's the one. Build your new metric for success around that. Not, am I honoring my past commitments, but am I aligned with who I am right now? Because the person you are in 2026 has earned the right to be measured by present standards, not historical ones. Every path you've walked, even the ones you abandoned, especially the ones you abandoned, left something in you. Skills, yes, but more than that, perspectives, instincts, ways of seeing problems that people who only ever walked one path simply don't have. The musician who became a marketer hears rhythm in copy. The pre-med student who pivoted to tech builds products with a systems thinker's precision. The aspiring novelist who ended up in consulting tells stories that make data feel human. You are not a collection of failures. You are a culmination. There is a profound difference. A collection is things piled up with no coherent meaning. A culmination is the result of a process, everything converging, everything feeding into something that wouldn't exist without all of it. That's you. That is actually, genuinely you. And in 2026, in a world where AI can replicate specialization faster than any single human can achieve it, the multidisciplinary mind isn't a liability. It's the edge. The person who holds multiple frameworks simultaneously, who finds the unexpected connection between fields, who has genuine emotional range because they've genuinely lived in multiple worlds. That person is not scattered. That person is rare. Dangerously, competitively rare. But only if you stop apologizing for it and start architecting it. So before I let you go, I want to give you something concrete. Not a list, a protocol. 5 moves. The ones that actually work when you're standing at the edge of everything we just talked about and you need to know what to do first thing tomorrow morning. First, conduct a ruthless schedule audit. Go through every recurring commitment on your calendar and ask one brutal question. Does this exist because it serves who I am now, or because it once served who I was trying to become? If it's the latter, it goes. You are not canceling your future. You are canceling your past's claim on your present time. Second, apply a 72-hour curiosity filter before committing to anything new. The next time something shiny lands in your lap, a new idea, a new skill, a new hobby, don't act on it immediately. Write it down. Sit with it for 72 hours. Sleep on it 3 times. If it still has the same pull after 3 days, it's worth exploring. If it fades, it was impulse dressed up as passion. And you spent enough of your life chasing impulses dressed up as passion. Third, perform a monthly digital subscription purge. Go through your apps, your newsletters, your saved courses, your bookmarked channels. Anything that exists as a reminder of a version of yourself you've already moved past. Cancel it, delete it, unsubscribe. Every notification from a dead chapter is a tiny ghost tapping on your shoulder. Stop letting them in. Fourth, log 3 micro wins every single evening. Not big wins, micro wins. Things you actually did today that moved your present life forward, even slightly. Right now, your brain is wired to measure you against the impossible standard of everything you didn't become. 3 small wins a night, written down, starts to rewire that. Slowly, consistently. It builds a new kind of evidence. Evidence that you are, in fact, moving. That you are not failing. You are building. And fifth, implement a 90s-day skill sprint. Pick one skill that serves who you are right now. Give it 90 days of focused, intentional practice. Not forever. Not a lifetime commitment. 90 days. Low pressure, high focus, clear endpoint. At the end, you decide whether it graduates into your permanent toolkit or gets a clean, grateful goodbye. This keeps growth agile. This keeps you moving without the crushing weight of open-ended obligation. 5 moves. That's your protocol. That's how the philosophy becomes a practice. The version of you who picked up that guitar was real. The version who dreamed about the startup was real. The version who was going to learn the language, write the book, change careers. All real, all valid, all part of the process that made you exactly sharp enough, exactly layered enough, exactly ready enough for what you're building right now. You don't owe them grief, you owe them gratitude. And then you owe yourself permission to move forward without dragging their weight behind you. Because the person you are becoming, the one on the other side of this great incineration, the one with reclaimed focus and the 5-move protocol running in the background, that person is not a consolation prize for the versions you didn't become. That person is the point. So stop mourning, start building. The next version of you is waiting, and unlike the ghosts, this one actually shows up.